Picture this. January 1st, 1540. You're standing on the deck of a ship, crossing the English Channel. You're 24 years old, a princess from Cleves, Germany. Your name is Anne. Around you, ladies-in-waiting whisper excitedly about your future. You're about to marry Henry VIII, King of England, the most powerful man in Europe. You don't speak English. You've never met him, but you've seen his portrait, painted by Hans Holbein, the greatest artist in Europe. He looks magnificent. What you don't know is that Henry has also seen your portrait, painted by the same artist, and he's convinced himself you're the most beautiful woman he's ever laid eyes on. Here's what makes this especially tragic. Everything that's about to happen could have been prevented, but the machinery of royal politics, once set in motion, cannot be stopped. Not even when the king realizes his mistake. Not even when he discovers something about your body that will disgust him so completely that he'll refuse to consummate the marriage. Not even when that refusal threatens to destroy an international alliance. The year is 1540, and you're sailing toward a nightmare dressed as a wedding. If you believe that the documented records of history's most devastating personal humiliations must be remembered, consider liking this video and subscribing. Your support unearths more accounts from the darkest corners of royal history. Let me show you what happened when physical attraction collided with political necessity in Tudor England. The marriage that never was. The smell that destroyed a queen. The medical condition that changed European history. This is the story of Anne of Cleves. You arrive at Rochester on New Year's Day, 1540. The journey from Calais has taken weeks. You're exhausted, travel-stained, wearing heavy German clothing unsuitable for the mild English winter. You're in your chambers, changing clothes after the journey. Your ladies are helping you wash, preparing you to meet important English nobles who've come to greet you. You don't know that Henry VIII himself is in the castle. He's come in disguise, unable to wait for the official greeting. He wants to surprise you, to see the beautiful woman from Holbein's portrait with his own eyes. The door bursts open. A large man in rough clothing enters your chamber. You're partially undressed. You step back, confused, frightened. This stranger approaches you, tries to embrace you, tries to kiss you. You pull away, horrified. You don't recognize him. How could you? You've never seen Henry VIII. You don't know what he looks like beyond Holbein's flattering portrait. You reject his advances, firmly, repeatedly. The man leaves, humiliated, angry. 20 minutes later, he returns. This time dressed in royal purple and gold. This time, you understand. You drop to your knees, you're shaking. You've just rejected the King of England. Henry's face is stone, cold, distant. According to the Spanish ambassador Eustace Chapuis, who documented the incident in a letter to Charles V, Henry spoke fewer than a dozen words to Anne that entire evening. His disappointment was immeasurable. Here's what nobody expected. The rejection in Rochester wasn't the real problem. Henry had been rejected before. He was 48 years old, massively overweight, with an ulcerated leg that smelled of rot. He knew he wasn't the young athlete from his portraits anymore, but he convinced himself that Anne was so beautiful that none of that would matter, that she would want him anyway, that love, or at least attraction, would blossom immediately. When it didn't, his ego was bruised. But marriages could survive bruised egos. What happened next was far worse. The wedding is scheduled for January 6th, 1540. 6 days after Rochester. Henry spends those 6 days trying to find a way out. He calls emergency meetings with Thomas Cromwell, his chief minister, the man who arranged this marriage. "I like her not," Henry tells Cromwell, according to Cromwell's own later testimony before Parliament. But the political situation won't allow cancellation. Anne's brother, Wilhelm, Duke of Cleves, is a crucial Protestant ally against Catholic France and Spain. Breaking the engagement would be diplomatic catastrophe. Henry has no choice. The wedding proceeds. You stand beside him at Greenwich Palace on January 6th. You're wearing English dress now, cloth of gold and silver, jewels in your hair. You speak your vows in heavily accented English you've been frantically learning. Henry speaks his vows. His face betrays nothing. That night, you wait in the royal bedchamber. Think about what this moment means. You're 24 years old, raised in the strict German court, educated to be modest, obedient, pure. You've been trained your entire life for this moment. Your duty is clear. Consummate the marriage. Produce an heir. Secure the alliance. Henry enters the chamber. What happens next is documented in extraordinary detail because Henry, desperate for annulment, will later force multiple witnesses to testify about the most intimate details of his wedding night. Henry approaches the bed. He lies down beside you. According to his later testimony to Thomas Cranmer, Archbishop of Canterbury, documented in the official annulment proceedings preserved in the British Library, Henry found you physically repulsive. But it wasn't your face. Holbein's portrait had been accurate enough. Your features were regular if plain. It was your body. Specifically, your smell. Henry testified that when he attempted to consummate the marriage, he found her body in such a displeasure and disorder that he lost all physical desire. The exact phrase he used was this: "I felt her belly and her breasts, and thereby, as I thought, judged her to be no maid." Translation: he believed you weren't a virgin. But there was something else. Something the official records dance around with euphemisms. Something that multiple historians have pieced together from fragmentary sources. The smell. Henry's personal physician, Dr. William Butts, later testified that the king complained of such a stench from her person that he could not approach her. Here's what medical historians now believe happened. Anne of Cleves likely suffered from bacterial vaginosis, a common infection that causes a distinctive fishy odor, particularly during intercourse. In the 16th century, with no antibiotics, no modern hygiene, no understanding of bacterial infections, this condition would have been untreatable, chronic, recurring, humiliating, made worse by the travel from Germany, weeks on horseback and ships, wearing heavy woolen clothing, unable to bathe properly. Made worse by stress, which increases bacterial imbalance. Made worse by the medieval understanding of female hygiene, which often made things worse rather than better. Think about this from Anne's perspective. You know something is wrong. You've known for months, maybe years. There's a smell you can't eliminate, no matter how often you wash, no matter what remedies you try. In 16th century Germany, women with such conditions were often considered cursed, bewitched, morally corrupt. The smell was seen as punishment for sin, evidence of sexual impurity. You've probably suffered in silence, ashamed, terrified someone will notice. And now, on your wedding night, the most powerful king in Europe notices immediately. Henry leaves your bed. Without consummating the marriage, he returns the next night and the next. For 3 months, he comes to your chamber, lies beside you, and does nothing. The court begins to whisper. Servants gossip. Ambassadors send coded letters to foreign courts. The king does not visit the queen's chamber with any pleasure, writes the French ambassador. If this moment in history doesn't move you to understand the crushing weight of royal humiliation, you might be missing how powerless women were when their bodies failed the standards of their time. Here's what makes this especially cruel. Henry doesn't tell you what's wrong. He doesn't explain. He simply withdraws, night after night, leaving you confused and ashamed. You ask your ladies-in-waiting if this is normal. How long does it usually take to conceive a child? They stare at you. One of them, Lady Rutland, later testifies that you seem to have no understanding of sexual intercourse at all. You tell them that Henry kisses you good night and good morning. Is that not enough? Lady Rutland gently explains that more is required. You're shocked, humiliated. You realize that something has been terribly wrong for 3 months, and you didn't even understand what. Meanwhile, Henry is building his case for annulment. He forces his gentlemen attendants to testify about his wedding nights. They describe hearing him complain about your body, your smell, your lack of attraction. Thomas Heneage testifies that Henry said, "I have felt her belly and her breasts, and thereby I judge her to be no maid, and I have neither will nor courage to proceed any further. Dr. Butts testifies about nocturnal emissions Henry experienced, proving his sexual function was intact. The problem was you. Think about the systematic humiliation being constructed here. The most intimate details of your wedding night, discussed by a panel of male courtiers and clergy. Your body examined, judged, found wanting. Your virginity questioned. Your smell documented in official records that will survive for centuries. This isn't just personal rejection. It's bureaucratic annihilation of your dignity. In July 1540, 6 months after the wedding, Henry summons you to Richmond Palace. His officials present you with documents. You don't fully understand the English legal language, but the message is clear. Annulment. You're given a choice. Contest the annulment and face public trial where every humiliating detail will be revealed in open court. Or accept it quietly and be rewarded with generous terms. You choose survival. You sign the documents. You agree that the marriage was never consummated, that therefore it was never valid, that you're willing to be known as the king's beloved sister rather than queen. In exchange, Henry gives you Richmond Palace, Hever Castle, and an income of £4,000 per year, making you one of the wealthiest women in England. You're 24 years old. You came to England as a queen. 6 months later, you're a divorced woman with a smell that disgusted a king. Here's what haunts me about Anne's story. She made the best of it. Unlike Henry's other wives, Catherine beheaded, Anne Boleyn beheaded, Jane Seymour dead in childbirth, Catherine Howard beheaded, Catherine Parr, who survived only because Henry died first, Anne of Cleves, outlived them all. She lived comfortably in England for 17 more years. She never remarried. She never returned to Germany. She attended court functions, remained friendly with Henry's children, enjoyed her estates, but the humiliation never disappeared. The smell that destroyed her marriage became her defining characteristic in historical memory. Contemporary chronicles describe her as the Flanders mare, a nickname Henry allegedly used, comparing her to a workhorse. Later accounts speculate endlessly about what was wrong with her body. Victorian historians whispered about venereal disease, sexual dysfunction, physical deformity. Modern historians debate bacterial vaginosis versus other infections versus simply cultural differences in grooming and hygiene between German and English courtside. But here's the thing that should truly disturb you. This wasn't madness. This wasn't random cruelty. This was the systematic way that women's bodies were judged, categorized, and rejected when they failed to perform as required. Anne's body had one job: attract the king, consummate the marriage, produce heirs. When it failed at step 1 through no fault of her own, through a medical condition she couldn't control or even understand, the entire machinery of divorce was activated. Doctors examined her. Courtiers testified about her. Clergy judged her. Politicians negotiated her value. Her body became state property, subject to investigation and annulment. Think about what this tells us about royal marriage in the Tudor era. These weren't romantic unions. They were political transactions where women's bodies were the currency. If the body was defective, too old, too young, too sick, too smelly, unable to produce sons, it could be returned for a full refund. Anne of Cleves died on July 16, 1557, at age 41, outliving Henry by a decade. She was buried in Westminster Abbey with honors due to royalty. Her tomb describes her as a Princess of Cleves, sister to William, Duke of Cleves, not queen, not wife, sister to someone more important. The smell that destroyed her marriage followed her to the grave. Historical accounts written decades later still mention it. Tudor historian Edward Hall, writing in the 1540s, describes the displeasure Henry felt toward her person. Later chroniclers are more explicit, discussing the stench and disorder of her body. Even now, 500 years later, we're still talking about it. Anne of Cleves is remembered not for her intelligence, her survival skills, her diplomatic grace, or her ability to thrive after public humiliation. She's remembered for the smell between her legs that disgusted Henry VIII. Here's the question that should keep you awake at night. How many other women throughout history have been defined by their body's failures? How many Anne of Cleves existed in courts across Europe, Asia, Africa, women whose medical conditions became public humiliation, whose natural bodily functions were treated as moral failings? And here's the even more disturbing question. How much has really changed? We live in an age of antibiotics, modern hygiene, bacterial understanding. Anne's condition would be treated with a simple prescription today. But the judgment of women's bodies, the reduction of women to their physical acceptability, the public humiliation when those bodies fail to meet standards, that machinery is still running. It's just been updated for the digital age. If this exposed something you've never heard before about Tudor history, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we're going to keep uncovering the medical horrors that shaped royal dynasties. Drop a comment with your thoughts on how Henry could reject Anne for a smell, while his own leg ulcer made him reek of rotting flesh. I'll see you in the next investigation.